Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar. Most of this will be me speaking live, but I've recorded a short introduction, so we'll start with that. Everyone watching apart from myself will be muted during the webinar, so if you have any questions, can you please just type them in the Q&A box and then I'll answer them all at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Hello there, I'm Tina Winter, a Chartered Financial Planner and Registered Life Planner with Balance Wealth Planning. Welcome to our latest webinar, Planning to Retire, a Comfortable Future. We started to plan this webinar before lockdown. I'm sure that everyone in the world is hoping for a comfortable future right now, but I'm also sure that there are still some uncomfortable times ahead for many of us. Possibly some people who weren't planning to retire just yet may be forced to before they feel they're really ready. I'm going to run through the financial aspects to consider when you're carrying out your retirement planning first of all, looking at a bit of a case study, and then moving on to talking about the emotional and practical aspects of retirement with help from some of our lovely clients who have already gone through the transition from full-time work to retirement. They are Steve and Wendy, who both retired from high-stress jobs as senior teachers about 5 years ago and are now very engaged retirees and wonder how they ever found time to go to work. And Dave and Adele, who I've been working with for the last 14 months or so and have gone through the process of Dave retiring only recently. So let's start with the money stuff and then move on to how the solid foundation of financial planning for retirement can prepare you for being able to enjoy the third stage of life to the full after the end of full-time, full-on work. Great, so this is what I'd like to go through with you today. A little bit of history first, then how you can plan to ensure you achieve financial independence so that you have a choice whether you to retire or not. And then I'll talk through some of the emotional and practical aspects and how we as financial planners can help clients through the transition to retirement. And we'll end with a few actions for you to take away. So a little bit of history first. Retirement as government policy wasn't actually adopted until the late 19th, early 20th century. Before that, you basically worked until you dropped, or you depended on your family to look after you in old age, if you reached old age, unless you were rich, of course. So the first state pension in the world was introduced in Germany in 1883. And that was paid from age 70, when male life expectancy was actually less than 70 years. So not many people actually lived to draw their pension. The normal retirement age in most Western countries changed to age 65 in 1916, and it's largely stayed there. And that age has been more to do with the ability to carry out work than life expectancy. So where are we now? Many clients that we come across want to stop full-time work probably in their late 50s to early 60s, or even earlier in some cases. But that's against a background of current median life expectancy being 86 for males in the UK and 88 for women in the UK. By 2045, that's expected to be 89 for men and 91 for female. And we're told that the first person that's going to live to age 150 is already alive today. Background to that is state pension age in the UK is getting older. It's currently 66, it's increasing to 67 and then 68 in stages, and probably going to be older than that in time. So people retiring now are likely to have a third of their life still ahead of them. So welcome to the third age. 60 plus in my mind is very much young old age, especially as I'm in that zone myself. I think old is always at least 10 years older than you are yourself. And my own father is still going strong at age 95, so that's what I think of as proper old age. So, retirement, full or part, is a time for new possibilities. Time for a rethink of your priorities in life, which will be different for everyone. Some people will have a bucket list. If you do, my advice is don't leave it too late. It will usually be experiences rather than stuff. Lockdown has certainly reminded me that circumstances outside our control may prevent us from doing the things we've always wanted to do. It may be your own state of health, the death of a loved one, or mere lack of funds that stops you from reaching your goal. Some people want to take on a new role, be it paid or voluntary. Some people want to do something completely different, perhaps studying, perhaps going to university if you never went in the first place, or doing a second degree. Some people may want to start that business. They've always wanted to start a new venture, and the end of full-time work gives them an opportunity to do so. And some people, of course, do want to stop work altogether because they've got other interests, be it looking after grandchildren, spending time with other family members, or travel. So let's put a few figures to this first. The Pensions and Lifetime Savings Association carried out a big piece of work in 2019 to put some actual figures behind what sort of sum you need to have a comfortable retirement. And they defined 3 levels: a minimum need, a moderate need, and a comfortable income post-retirement. And these are they. So a minimum annual income of £10,200 is basically only covering the basic necessities of life. That's the current rate of state pension plus just over £1,000 a year. But to produce that £1,000 a year, you'd need to have accumulated a pot of money at age 68 of about £36,000. A moderate annual income post-retirement, and these are all for single people, I would add, is £20,200 per year, which is state pension plus about £11,000 a year. But to produce that amount of income, guaranteed for the rest of your life, inflation-proofed, would actually take £366,000 at age 68, which is 10 times as much as the minimum. But we're looking at comfortable retirements here. A comfortable annual income of £33,000 for a single person would be full state pension plus about £24,000 a year, and that would need a pot at 68 of about £720,000, so it's 20 times as much as the minimum. As I mentioned, these figures assume full state pension of £9,110 a year receivable, and then an index-linked annuity bought at age 68 and average life expectancy in a single person. So what's a comfortable retirement? This is the PLSA definition of a comfortable retirement. It's not luxurious by any means, but all of your everyday needs are taken care of and a few extras. So it's financial freedom and some luxuries. A £56 a week food shop, a 2-year-old car replaced every 5 years, 3 weeks in holiday in Europe each year, that would be nice. £1,500 a year for clothes and footwear, and then replace kitchen or bathroom every 10 to 15 years, so some home improvements. £50 for each birthday present, I'm assuming Christmas presents as well. It's also assuming that you're not paying any mortgage or rent, which of course isn't always the case now in retirement. So planning for a comfortable retirement. How do we as financial planners approach planning for someone to achieve financial independence? Often as not, we'll start with a lifetime cash flow planning exercise. This short case study is based very loosely on myself and my husband's situation, although I've knocked a few years off our ages, a bit of artistic license there. As you can tell, I'm still working, I'm here. I'm not in a hurry to stop as I really enjoy my work. My husband Keith is happily retired and has been for some years now. So welcome to Keith and Tina Test. This busy looking graph is a lifetime cash flow. At the start of this slide, we're both age 57. Keith is already retired. Tina's working, but preferably would like to retire at age 58, only in a year's time. Keith has a final salary pension already in payment, which is the green. Tina has a smaller one with a normal retirement date of 60 and also has a personal pension she's been accumulating. They like holidays and would hope to spend about £15,000 a year on travel. Their normal expenditure is about £42,000 a year. There's some surplus income at present, but that just tends to get spent rather than saved. Now, as in most financial matters, red is bad. Green, as I mentioned, is defined benefit pensions in payment. Light blue is savings being withdrawn. Dark blue is state pensions coming in at age 67. Orange is withdrawals from Tina's personal pensions, but as you can see, that soon runs out, and at approximately age 65, they're in the red and are in the red for a number of years while they're still having those holidays. when holidays drop off in later life from about 75, which is what is anticipated, they're just about okay. So something needs to be tweaked here, really. So if we normally carry out a series of what-if exercises. Modelling here, Tina not stopping full-time work until age 60, and some heavy saving into pension contributions for the next few years. Some easing back on expenditure, possibly looking at Tina working part-time for a few years after 60. The position looks a lot rosier. They're going to have those holidays, and there's not going to be any negative figures in any of those years. So let's go on to how you're going to provide for your retirement. There are three main strings to planning financially for retirement, and the first and the most universal is state pension. For a large proportion of the UK population, I understand over 40%, state pension is their main source of post-retirement income. And the full single-tier state pension is currently £175.20 per week, so that's £9,110 per year, as shown in the earlier slides. State pension age is 66 from October 2020. It's 67 if you're 50 plus now, and it's going to be 68 later. It currently rises annually in line with the triple lock, which is the highest of inflation, average earnings, and 2.5%. But for how long is that going to continue? It's already been talked about that the triple lock will go basically to help cover the cost of the lockdown. You currently need 35 years of national insurance contributions to receive the full amount of state pension, and the level that you receive may be affected by being contracted out of the state earnings related pension or second state pension in earlier years. What I'd recommend here is that you check your entitlement on gov.uk website and make up for missing years if there are any gaps. The second string is defined benefit pension schemes. Historically, the majority of workplace pensions were final salary pension schemes, a subclass of defined benefit schemes. Nowadays, live final salary schemes are mainly confined to the public sector. The more modern schemes are the care schemes, career average revalued earnings. And as the name suggests, under defined benefit schemes, the benefits at retirement are defined by the rules of the scheme. So, for example, typical final salary scheme would be 60ths of final salary times years of service as a pension at retirement, or 75ths of salary for each year of service revalued for a career average scheme. In the public sector, you'll find both funded and unfunded schemes. The main public sector schemes are actually just paid for from current taxation. In the private sector, all schemes will be funded schemes, but as I mentioned previously, they're largely historical with no new entrants, although there will be plenty of people who are still deferred members of private sector defined benefit schemes. And they are very much the gold standard of pension schemes. So, key point about defined benefit schemes is that the investment risk lies with the employer, not the employee. The contribution level is fixed for the employee and variable for the employer. Employees receive tax relief via the net pay scheme. The amount of their contributions is deducted from their pay before income tax is calculated. An important point here is that benefits entitlement can't be changed retrospectively. You can't go back and change the past, but future benefits can. So there can be scheme rules that change how pension is built up for the future, but they can't change the past. Once you come to take benefits from a defined benefit scheme, at retirement, part of the pension can be commuted for a tax-free lump sum. And with some schemes, the lump sum is automatic. For example, the benefits may be defined as 1/80th of final salary as a pension plus 3/80 as a final salary, as a times years of service as a lump sum. And the pension will be payable for the life of the scheme member. It's likely to be inflation proofed, either CPI or RPI, and that'll be governed by the scheme rules. It's likely to include a spouse's and dependents' pensions. And it's likely to include guarantees if death occurs shortly after starting to take benefits. And there will be an early retirement reduction if benefits are started before scheme normal retirement date. You'll have heard about pension transfers. Transfers from defined benefit schemes to defined contribution schemes are only possible from funded schemes. The default position is very much to stay put. When I was training about defined benefit schemes, I was always told you need 3 good reasons to transfer. You need to take regulated advice from an authorised financial planner if the transfer value is £30,000 or more. Some schemes will allow partial transfers, which is actually could be a very useful facility. And after transfer, the risk passes to the scheme member instead of the scheme trustees. Defined contribution schemes are the third string of retirement provision. So the majority of pension provision in the private sector now is defined contribution, also known as money purchase. That's a term you may have heard. So in a workplace pension scheme, the employer will pay in a fixed percentage of salary, then the employee needs to pay a minimum percentage of salary, but can pay more. If you're self-employed or own your own company, you'll need to make your own pension provision via defined contribution scheme. And you'll often see additional voluntary contribution schemes, often alongside defined benefit schemes, to actually pay additional contributions and increase your overall limit of benefits. There is a tax relief for contributions into a scheme subject to limits. There are lifetime allowances and annual allowances. I'm not going to go into detail of those now, but if anyone wants to ask questions, I can answer those in the Q&A. So building up benefits under a defined contribution scheme. What you actually do here is that you build up a fund of money that's invested and then accessed no earlier than age 55. As I said, that fund is invested. There will be various investment options open to you, but workplace schemes and personal pensions will normally have a default. So if you don't choose, then they will choose for you. The default will often be what's called a lifestyle or a target date fund, where basically they have a growth phase, typically up to 10 years before retirement, where you have more of a higher risk investment profile, and then a pre-retirement phase in the 10 years before retirement, where the risk is reduced gradually. It's also possible to select your own underlying investments if this is something you're doing yourself, or you could have obviously a financial advisor helping you with this. What my tip there would be is be strategic, not tactical. Don't go for the latest hot thing. Look for a well-diversified portfolio. Also watch underlying costs. Costs can eat into the value of an investment fund very quickly. There's also an option called a self-invested personal pension, or a SIP, which you may have heard of, which actually allows a much wider choice of underlying investments and allows you to help select your own investments. Defined contribution schemes, when you come to take benefits, there's actually a lot of flexibility there. You can have up to 25% of your pot as a tax-free cash. Remember, we talked about that £720,000 pot for a comfortable retirement. The remainder of the fund continues to be invested and is then used to provide income. Historically, annuity purchase was the only option. Annuity purchase is basically handing over the pension fund to an insurance company who then pay you a fixed income for life. Not a lot of flexibility, and in this current low interest rate, and longevity situation, annuity rates tend to be pretty low at the moment. The major option that's now used is flexible drawdown. Flexible drawdown just means that you can take as much or as little from the fund as and when you want, either as regular payments or ad hoc payments. And cash flow planning that we talked about earlier can be very helpful to simulate what's going to be possible there. Remember that a £720,000 pension pot for a comfortable retirement is a guide. The important thing here is to make sure that the money doesn't run out before you do. And that's where a financial planner can help to make sure that you have a proper strategy for your post-retirement income. So, talked about the 3 ways of building up pension for retirement. What I would always recommend is that when you're planning for your retirement is that you take stock of what you've got. Check your state pension entitlement and catch up on contributions if need be. Keep track of your pensions from past employments. Let them know if you move house. Check that the underlying investments are still suitable. You may be taking more risk than you need to take, or you may be taking less risk than it's advisable. Make sure you do stay in your workplace scheme to benefit from employer contributions and pay additional contributions when you're able to. It is possible to opt out, but that's very rarely going to be the right thing to do. If you're self-employed or a company owner, it's totally up to you to provide for your retirement. So personal pensions, possibly self-invested personal pension, or if it's a company, a small self-administered scheme. Is your business really your pension? This is something that we hear from clients quite often. But it makes a lot of sense to be building up your retirement provision alongside your business. You may want to exit before a business sale is possible, for example. And I always say it makes a lot of sense to actually build up a pot of wealth outside your business. Could be saving for retirement in other ways, for example, ISAs, general investment accounts, GIAs, which are just investments that aren't in a wrapper, or property. Some people are very keen to build up a buy-to-let property portfolio, for example. But whatever you have, what I'd recommend is that you continue to take stock of what you've got. Before we move on to our clients, I just wanted to sort of point out that people's working lives have different shapes and people's retirements have different shapes. I gave you a sort of little taster of myself and my husband earlier. This is basically what shape my working life has had, which is probably the reason why I'm still working, my husband isn't. Studying in the early years between 5 and 21, a bit of work while still studying, working full-time up to age 30, but then about 15 years of working part-time, bringing up children, etc., back to full-time work at 45, a bit of a gap at age 55 on redundancy, and then going back into part-time work, but with some studying and hoping to continue to work for some years, but actually continuing to study as well. And my working life has possibly been similar to a number of people's, especially many women's. My husband Keith's working life's been much more straightforward. This is perhaps the traditional model of studying only, working, and then retirement, but it's not necessarily the norm nowadays. I always call this a fall off the cliff retirement, that basically you're working full time and then suddenly you're not working at all. As I said, that has been the traditional model, but most people nowadays, their lives are quite different from that. Right, now we're going to start to look at some of our clients. This is the interesting stuff. What do you want your retirement to look like? This is Steve and Wendy's. So Steve and Wendy have been clients of mine for several years now, since a few years before retirement, which they took from about age 65 or 6 years ago. Steve was actually 65 last week. They're looking pretty happy in these pictures. Here they are away on holiday. spending time with grandchildren. They've got 3 now. Going away in their camper van, big purchase there, and doing some charity work. Wendy's involved in helping out at a local food bank. Steve had a fall off a cliff retirement that we mentioned earlier. He worked full-time until he was 60 and then stopped completely. But Wendy transitioned by working part-time for a year or 2 before finally retiring, and she also worked part-time earlier in her career. I mentioned previously that I was a registered life planner. The advisors at Balanced Wealth have all undergone life planning training. It's proper holistic financial planning, and it's all about working with people to clarify what they would like their lives to be like and then fitting the money around that. Money is only a means to an end when it comes down to it. So as part of our discovery process with clients, we ask them these 3 questions. Imagine that you have all the money you need for the rest of your life. How would you live your life? If you knew that you only had 5 to 10 years left to live, what would you do in your remaining years? And then the $64 million question. You've just been told you've only 1 day left to live. What did you miss? What did you not get to be? What did you not get to do? So George Kinder, the father of life planning, has written a number of books, and one of them, Life Planning for You, is designed for the public rather than for financial planners. And in that book, he's researched what answers clients tend to give across the whole spectrum of life planners across the world. And this is what people typically answer, or the categories that people's answers fall into. They mention family or relationship goals, spirit and value goals, creativity goals, and that includes new business ventures, community goals, and place and environment goals, having a sense of place. So just to try and visualize those goals to a certain extent, family and relationship goals could mean spending more time with family and friends, helping children buy property, possibly finding a soulmate even. Spirit and value goals could be wanting to live a more spiritual life, wanting to take time out to meditate, wanting to actually live a simpler life. Creativity goals could be writing that book that you're sure you've got in you, studying. A client of mine who's just retired as an accountant has now gone off to do a history degree, possibly learning to play an instrument or opening that new creative business perhaps. Community goals could just mean getting more involved with your local community that you haven't had time to do while you've been working. Perhaps volunteer, perhaps for a charity, or perhaps get involved in philanthropy. Place and environment goals could be buying that holiday home and spending time in it, buying that camper van, that seems to be a very, very popular one, that, or possibly just working to save the planet. Be involved in the environment more. So what were Steve and Wendy's goals for their retirement? Well, get and keep fit, which they have done by walking, cycling, running and yoga. Help their 2 children get onto the property ladder, which they have done. Spend as much time as possible with their grandchildren, which they were doing until lockdown, as 2 of them live quite a distance away. Be an active part of their community. I mentioned that Wendy helps out at the local food bank. Steve gets involved with organising events for the Lifeboat Institute, and they get involved with local events in the area in which they live. And they have bought that camper van. You saw a picture of it earlier, and they spend several months a year travelling in it, and they can't wait for July the 4th when they hope to take off in it again. And as you can see, not all of these goals involve money. So let's move on now to the other clients that I mentioned, Dave and Adele. I'm very pleased to say that they were happy for me to record a video meeting I had with them recently, where they talked about Dave's recent transition into retirement. Adele is still working in a part-time job that she enjoys. So first of all, the first segment I'm going to show you here is actually the experience that Dave and Adele went through with us which they said was quite unlike their previous experience of taking financial advice. So how was it for them?
I would say that parts of it, we've had financial advice before, so parts of it felt familiar. The parts about detailing your income and your assets and your outgoings, a lot of that is the kind of the mechanics of it. Mm-hmm. That all felt fairly familiar. You have to put the legwork in, but I think we were ready for that. Parts that I suppose personally I hadn't expected quite so much were more about who we were as people and what we wanted now and what we wanted in the future. I think I was a bit...
Yeah, I would say the same, actually.
I was quite... and actually those... I thought you were asking those questions partly because I thought you were genuinely interested in them. But they turned out to be some of the things that I think made quite a big difference. So I would split it into two parts, really. I'd say there's the mechanics of explaining the numerical profile, the financial profile. And then there's the stuff about what our attitudes to risk are and all that stuff. But also just really who we were as people and what we wanted.
Yeah, very much so.
I enjoyed it. It made you think about what you want, what you don't want, what you'd like to do in the near future and a bit further out, and how you see yourself. If you're not working, what else do you want to do? What else do you really want to do? You know, you've got a real passion.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
And that's cast a positive shadow, because having said those things, I kind of feel now duty bound to live them.
So a lot of the goals and objectives that were revealed when we carried out the discovery and vision process with Dave and Del, how are they working towards those? Unfortunately, they've had to cancel a much anticipated holiday to Vietnam because of lockdown, but I'm sure that will be rearranged. How are you moving on the things that you said you were going to do, Dave, that didn't actually involve a lot of travelling? Because obviously I know that's been a sore point at the moment.
Yes, we got some bruises on travelling. Can I go again?
Yeah.
So for me personally, just to recap, we're kind of quite homely people. We didn't have extravagant dreams, did we?
No.
We did want to travel more, and I think we've already hinted that obviously lockdowns interfered with that.
Yeah.
We were ready to go, suitcases by the front door. So we were doing that. We had up to the point that circumstances have allowed, we were really doing that. But also, prior to lockdown, I'd seen my friends more, and I remember saying to them, went to see some friends for a weekend, and I remember saying to them, if I was still at work, I would not be here.
Yeah.
So that was a moment when I said, all right, okay, this is making a difference. But also, some of the things that I wanted to do a lot more. I'm very geeky, and if we go back in time, I'm a mathematical physicist, and I really got my head around things like quantum mechanics in a way I haven't done for years. So I've done that.
Oh, excellent.
That's been brilliant. I might just for fun at some point. I might show you my next book. It's about that.
Is this a mathematical physics book or something else?
It is, yes. It's by a chap called Penrose, who's the ecumenical professor at Oxford. And that stuff takes a lot of time. You know, it's quite time consuming. I've been doing a lot more of my gaming stuff. The other thing I wanted to do that I'm not sure I ever confessed to you at the time was I wanted to potentially make some differences on the health front. Got some minor chronic things that were actually one of the reasons I wanted to retire. And blood pressure is involved in those, so I've been doing a lot of running. And right now I've managed to reduce medication. I think I'm on track to reduce it further. So quite a lot of things I wanted to do that have turned out to be time consuming. We're making real inroads into that.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's great to hear. Regrets? They've had a few, but then again, too few to mention. You don't want to get to the position outlined in the third life planning questions and that you've only got one day to live and feel that you've missed out on experiences that you really wanted to have?
So I'm hesitating. I'm trying to decide just how to say yes in a slightly grand. Sorry, how to say no. There aren't any regrets in a slightly anxious way. No regrets. It's not a moment of regret. I think I was speaking to my old work colleagues yesterday, and there are some tricky things going on at work, as I knew there would be.
Yeah. And
I really wanted to be able to step in and help in whatever way I could, and suddenly I realised I can't do that anymore. So that because I want to help them. I don't think that's really a regret. I think that's just kind of social talk. But no, no regrets at all. I'm doing some minor stuff for a friend that's kind of pseudo work. But no, at no moment have I thought, oh, do you know what, I think I ought to go back.
So Dave and Adele have definitely been on a journey from Dave being in a full-time stressful job in IT, which at our first meeting he told me he hated, through a comprehensive planning process to where they are today, with Adele still working part-time in a job she enjoys and Dave fully retired. Here's what Dave has to say about that.
Yeah, I've been on a journey about retiring. You know, despite all the models, I was worried about the numbers.
Yeah.
I'd say the first few weeks of retirement, there were symptoms of anxiety, weren't there?
What's that? Living on the edge.
And then, of course, lockdown had a big negative press on funds, so that made that I probably reacted to that worse. But actually, the strength of the model has been that actually the model's really stood up. The work you guys did has really stood up. And I think that even with all that happening, we're okay.
That's great to hear. So I've mentioned financial planning a few times now, and it might be helpful to clarify what that means. This is how I would describe it. Financial planning is an ongoing process to help you make sensible decisions about money and give you the best chance of achieving your goals in life. What I particularly want to emphasize is that financial planning is not primarily about money. First and foremost, it's about life and what you want to get out of it. So, to summarize here, your actions to take away. If you're planning for a comfortable retirement, think seriously about what you want to do with the rest of your life, not just financially. Plan what you want to do with your time, be it spending more time with family, be it taking up hobbies, be it travel, increasing your social life, or perhaps studying. Check your state pension entitlement and fill any gaps if necessary. I would recommend gov.uk website. Think about other possible sources of income. Do you want to continue to work part-time perhaps? Do you want to start your own business? Do you want to rent out some properties? Think about where you want to live. Do you want to downsize? Do you want to move abroad or possibly move nearer to other family members? Make sure that you collect together details of your existing pensions, and there's something called the pension tracing service that could help, and other investments. And then I would also recommend speak to an independent financial planner who specialises in holistic planning, preferably a life planner. So about us, about balanced wealth planning. We are a chartered financial planning firm. We are holistic financial planning specialists. We're experts in planning for big lifestyle or financial changes, such as the transition into retirement. We have an office in West Bridgford. We're a very friendly bunch, and we are available in person, or we are currently we're normally operating via Teams video meetings. And there is details of our website email address and phone number.